Okay, let's look at number 21 that we have here. We see we got a coordinate geometry question. We see something about, talking about the XY plane. So that's usually going to indicate we're talking about coordinate geometry things. And the other thing it's telling us is it has a positive slope and intersects the y-axis at a point that has a negative y coordinate to things. So we see we have two elements in this that we're trying to identify. The slope is positive and the y-intercept is negative. So which one of these will yield that? So we just kind of have to actually go through the exercise of manipulating each question, unfortunately. So if we take A of things, we know we've got to move this over. So we're going to have 2y equals 3x minus 5 and then divide by 2. Things. And what we end up getting here is we do that, we see that we're going to end up having a positive slope of things. So yeah, because we had to add 3x here and add 3x here. So what you'll see is we get y equals 3 halves x minus 5 halves. So actually we check and we've got we have a positive slope and we have a negative intercept. And so therefore we can see the answer choice on this one is A for 21. And let's move on. All right, let's move to the next problem here. What we see, this is kind of a modeling problem. What we see here is, again, we see an equation. So that's our first, always our first characteristic that we see in these modeling questions. And we also see in this one, it says the graph of y equals f of x and the xy plane intersects the axis at 0 and A. What does the A represent here? So what we have here is we see that we have an upside down parabola, right? Sometimes it's best to draw these things when we talk about modeling questions. And what we can then see is, so it doesn't really matter where it intercepts so much. We just know that we have some sort of parabola that's going to the origin of 0, 0, right? Actually, that's a really bad drawing of that. Let me try that again. So I have something that's kind of coming through here and doing this, things. And we're talking about two intercepts. Just wants to know what these two intercepts, which it says the x plane intersects the axis at 0 and A. So this is 0 here. This is 0, 0. And the other one is, what we see is A and 0. That's supposed to be an A. 0 because we know the y values are zeros because we're on the y-axis. So looking at this, we know that the revenue in dollars that a company receives, so we know that the y equals the revenue in dollars, and the x is the unit price in dollars of the product. We see that being indicated here, that the x is the unit price in dollars of the product. So as we sort of write that down, x is price for the product of things. So if we're looking at what the A of the x is here, right, then we know we're looking for something that's talking about the unit price, right? We're talking about the x value of A, which is talking about the unit price. So eliminating off units, we know we can successfully eliminate A because it's talking about the revenue in dollars. We're not talking about that at all. And we're not talking about the maximum revenue in dollars that the company make either. So it's not that at all, because usually when we see max that, that's talking about the vertex of sorts. So we're looking between B and C on this one that we have. So looking at the units a little bit closer, it says B says unit price in dollars of product that result in maximum revenue. So remember, Y is revenue. Well, the revenue here is 0, so that can't be it at all. So that's not true. There's no max revenue there because there is no revenue on that one. C says unit price in dollars of product that will result in a revenue of $50. Bingo. Revenue of $50. That's what that element there means, is revenue of $0 of sorts. So C is the answer choice on this one. Okay, continue along. We see we have another coordinate geometry question. We see xy plane again. The graph of the equation ax plus ky equals 6 is a line in the xy plane where a and k are constants. And the line contains the points 2, 6, and 0, -3. What is the value of k here? Well, one, we can find the slope between these two. And the slope here is A. That's the slope there. That's the M there. So we can find that by M equals change of Y, change of X. So if we do take this, -3 minus -6 over 0 minus -2, what we end up doing is this is going to end up being a +6 here. This is going to be a +2 here. So -3 plus 6 is going to give me 3, and then that's going to give me 0 plus 2 is going to give me 2. So we see the slope here, or the A, essentially. The A here is 3/2. Actually, I want to write this somewhere else. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room here. So the A equals 3/2, or that's the M as well. And then we have these points here that really these are X and Y, so we could take these and plug them in. Well, I want to take this one because that is already a 0. That is saying there that X equals 0 and then the Y equals -3. So that's essentially going to eliminate that. So I'm going to take this, move it down. So AX plus KY equals 6. Plug in my points. So the A is 3/2 times 0 plus K times Y, which is -3 equals 6. And I'm just going to solve. So that's going to give me 0 there. And as I continue, I'm going to have -3k equals 6 divided by -3. And I'm going to get k equals -2, or A is my answer choice here. So here we have to derive the slope, take the points, plug them in, and then solve for the missing constant value. Okay, 24, as I look at it, immediately I know this is exponential. I see all of these. This is saying y equals a times x to the b power. Of things where it looks like we're just developing an equation out of this. This is from 2005, 2014. The number of music CDs sold in the United States declined each year by approximately 15% of the number sold the preceding year. So remember, when we see these things, remember when we're solving for the percentages, this is always going to be 1 plus r or 1 minus r. Since it's decreasing, it's going to be 1 minus r variety, which means it's going to be 1.0 minus 0.15, which is going to give me 0.85 as my percentage value there. So immediately as I go through and eliminate, well, actually, it can't be A, can't be C, can't be D. So immediately, just by solving that one piece and looking at that, I can see the answer choice is B. Okay, number 25, what we're looking at here, we see we have another modeling question. We see an equation here, and we see what is the meaning of this point here. This one's a little bit different, but the principle remains the same, that we're still eliminating by units. And as we look at this and sort of piece those things out, we see that the function g above models the growth rate of a certain plant in millimeters per day. So the function g, or essentially that's y, that's saying, g of t or y equals millimeters per day of things. And the next point is telling us that it is saying in terms of watering time, t is in minutes per day. So we see that essentially t, which serves the value of x here, is in minutes per day. And what we see here says, what is the meaning of f.51? Well, that is the x value right there. That is the x. So we know x and minutes per day should go together. So as I start to look at my answering choices, I see that the watering time, 5.5 minutes per day, so that checks out. The plant growth rate of 5.51 millimeters per day, that does not check out. Those units do not belong together. The watering time increases by g, a function of 5.51 minutes per day. Well, no, g of the function of 5.51 minutes per day, again, that's there suggesting us the y unit, which the y unit should be paired with the millimeters per day. Because remember, the function of g is the same thing as y, so that is out. So B and C are out. And here it says the growth rate increases by the function of g millimeters per day, which that part is okay. This segment right here, because that is saying that the value of g, the function of g is in millimeters per day, so that is okay for every 5.51 meter per day increase in watering time. So here, that is not what's going on. The 5.51, that is not a slope or rate of change that we have. That is the x value. That is the x value. And so for that reason, it being compared to an increase makes that wrong. So here, the answer choice is A. The watering time of 5.51 minutes per day results in a plant growth rate of the function of g of 5.51 millimeters per day. That is true, and such along with that. So A is the right answer choice on that one. Okay, let's look at the next one. It says a psychologist designed and conducted a study determine whether playing a certain educational game increases middle school students' accuracy for fractions. For the study, the psychologist chose a random sample of 35 students from all of the students at one middle school group in a large city. So they all came from one middle school in a large city. The scientists found that students who played the game showed significant improvement in accuracy when adding fractions. What is the largest group to which the study applies? So here we have to keep in mind we have to stay within the sample size. The random sampling that we took came from one of the middle schools in a large city. So it didn't come from all those middle schools in a large city. It came from one. So that means, can we extend beyond the 35 students that we have here? Yes. So it can go beyond 35 students in a sample. So we can extend beyond it because it was a random sample. So A is not correct. All the students at the school. Well, let me see. So that seems appropriately correct. Let me see the next one. So it says all middle school students in the city. No, it can't be in the city because it only came from one school. So it's not C. All the students in the city. Again, we sampled middle school, not all students, so that part is wrong. So here the answer choice is B. We can only go and extend to those middle school students at the school that we surveyed there. Okay. Let's look at number 27. It says it's determined that a right cylindrical containers with a height is 4 inches longer than the radius offer the optimal number of containers to be displayed on a shelf. Which of the following expresses the volume in cubic inches of such containers where r is the radius in inches? So here, this is we have these values that we're having to plug in, and so if I was to draw a cylinder, right? So let's draw a cylinder here. This is a really bad cylinder, but what I'm saying here is that the height is 4 inches longer than the radius. So we have some value of the radius, which is just r that's been given to us. We don't know anything else about it. We just know the radius is just equivalent to r. But the height is r plus 4. So the height is r plus 4 here. Well, to solve for the volume of a cylinder, we then know that the volume is equivalent to pi r squared, which that's just a circle, and then add in a third dimension of the height. So we'll plug those values in. So r is just r, so that's going to be pi r squared. And we're adding the height here, which the height here is going to be r plus 4. So that's the height there. So as we continue to solve, this is going to be pi, that's just going to be r squared. And then that's going to be multiplied by r plus 4. Well, what we have to then do is we have to distribute this segment into here and into here as well. So what we end up as a resultant of it is pi r squared, no, pi r cubed, sorry, because pi r squared times r is going to be the r cubed, and then plus 4 pi r squared. So we see that as being indicated right here. Hold on. Yes. Yeah. think that's right. 27 is D. Yes, that's right. Sorry, I'm just having a little struggle reading what's on there and stuff, but I'm pretty, yeah. D is the answer choice on that one. Okay, let's look at number 28 here. We see that we have this function of 3 of x equals x minus 6 for all values of x, where what is the value of f of 6 here? So we're comparing these two things that essentially that we have together. And so as a result, we know that f of 6 is the same thing as f of 3, because 3 times 2, meaning that the x value there is equivalent to 2 of sorts, as we solve for that. And so what that is meaning that we're dividing this function by a value of 3 there. Okay, whatever we have of x, we're going to divide by 3. So as we put that in, we're going to say is x minus 6. So in the next notation, we have the function of 6. We put the 6 in there, which again, we're dividing by 3 and then minus 6. So that is going to give us 2 minus 6, or which gives us negative 4, which is B. Number 29 here. What we see here is we have a system and constants. And we had a couple of these that are in the curriculum of sorts. And remember, always with these, the very first step is put it into slope-intercept form. All right. Well, we have a fraction that's on the top one, right? That's not friendly. So we want to then multiply by our least common denominator. So distributing that into each one of these. So that's 6 times 1/2 x is going to give me 3x. 6 times 1/3 y is going to give me positive 2y. And 6 times 1/6 is just going to give me a value of 1. Now we want to move what we have over of sorts. And so as a result, we're going to get 2y equals 1 minus 3x. Divide by 2. And so we're going to end up with y equals 1/2 minus 3/2 x. And so we see the slope on this one is right here. So let's take the second one now. The second one, we just want to move things over. And so now we have y equals 6 minus ax. And so we see that the slope on this one is negative a. Now remember, this has an infinite number solution. So what that is really saying here is that we have two lines, right? Two lines that are essentially the same. Means they have the same slope, same intercept, right? So here, to make this an infinite number solution, we have to have the same slope in order to make that true of things. So as we do that, we can set and compare them. So we have the negative 3/2 is equivalent to negative a over 1, because that's just a fraction of source of a over negative a over 1. Cross multiply divide, so we're going to get negative 2a is equivalent to negative 3. I want to divide by negative 2 here, and negative 2, and I'm going to get a equals 3/2, which is D. All right, now looking at number 30, we see we have this two-way table of sorts, and in it, and we see all this text here. All of this is just telling me what's in here, so I need to read it. It is telling me that I had the researcher found that adults surveyed in the suburbs of Atlee is twice as likely to own a car as an adult surveyed in the city of Atlee. So the suburbs and their ability to have a car is 2 times that of the city. Okay, so what could be the value of x? Well, first we need to figure out what is the probability of the city of Adelaide. Remember, probability is going to be the number favorable over the number possible. So in this particular instance, the number favorable for who owns a car in the city of Adelaide is 80 over the number possible of 200. And as we eliminate that, we get 8 over 20, or 0.4. So there's a 0.4% chance of someone having a car in the city of Adelaide. Well, the suburbs of Adelaide is twice as much. So we know the suburbs, the probability of it is going to be 2 times the probability of that of in the city. Remember, the city is right there. So that's going to give me 0.8. So there's an 80% chance that you're going to have something in the suburbs of Adelaide, which there's 300 people. So 300 times 0.8 is going to give me 240. So the answer choice is D there. All right. number 31, as we look at this, it is telling us that pure beeswax has a density of 0.5 ounces per cubic inch. An online company sells pure beeswax at a price of $8 per ounce. What is the selling price in dollars per cubic inch? So we want to be in dollars per cubic inch is where we want to be in for beeswax purchased for this company. So this is just a rates problem. I want to be in dollars per cubic inch. So here I'm in $8 per ounce. Right? And then I want to multiply by this, which is going to tell me that is going to be 0.555 ounces over per cubic inch, right? So inch cubed. And I want to be in dollars per inch cubed or cubic inch. And as you notice, as I multiply through, what's happening is I'm going to eliminate the ounces here. And I'm going to be left with my desirable unit of dollars per inch cubed. And as I multiply and do that value, $8, that's going to give me 8 times 0.0555. Actually, got too many zeros. 555 is going to give me 4.44. So what you'll see is my answer is going to be, it's going to be $4.44 per cubic inch. So my answer is 4.44. Okay, here 32 it says the mean list of numbers above is what fraction of the sum of the 5 numbers of things. Well, as we look at this, what we can then see is the mean list of the numbers. So if we sum all these up and divide by 5, right, because that's 5 numbers, we're going to get 12, 15, 28, 28 divided by 5, right? So that's going to be 25. And then the fraction is what fraction of the sum of the numbers. So that means we're dividing by those things. So we're taking the 28 divided by 5 over 28 here of things. Well, if we're dividing these things, then remember dividing these fractions, so that's a fraction, so you keep 28 divided by 5, and then we want to change the operation and then flip. So that's 28, so now that'd be 1 over 28. And what you'll notice is that you now eliminate the values of 28, and you are left with 1 over 5 as my answer choice. Okay, so this one says an equation x plus 6 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 121. What is the radius circle? Remember, the radius of this is equivalent to this value here. So what we're saying is that r squared equals 121. So take the square root, so you get r equals 11 there of things. Remember, this is in the form of x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared. That's our formula for that. All right, let's continue to move on. It says a baker is gathering the ingredients required to make 15 batches of oatmeal cookies and 1 cake. 15 batches, oatmeal cookies, 1 cake. The cake will require 1/4 bag of flour. So we see that is there that the cake needs 1/4 flour. The baker needs a total of more than 3 but less than 4 bags of flour. What is one possible value for the fraction of 1 bag of flour required for each batch of cookies? Right? So the baker needs a total of more than 3 but less than 4 bags of flour. What is one possible value for the fraction of 1 bag of flour required for each batch of cookies? Well, here we know cake requires 1/4 bag of flour, right? And we're using somewhere between 3 and 4 bags, right? So there's a couple ways I can solve for this. I'm just going to take the upper end of this. So I know if I have 4 bags and I take 1/4 away, then that's just telling me that now I have, for the cookies, right, I have 3.75 bags of flour, okay? And we know that there's 15 batches of oatmeal cookies. So we want to know how much is 1 bag, what fraction of 1 bag of flour required for each batch of cookies. So we're talking about flour over for one batch of cookies. So I have 3.75 bags of flour. I have 15 batches. And so once I do the math there, the thing is getting out my calculator. I can then see that 3.75 divided by 15 is going to give me some value of 0.25. So this is 0.25 is my answer here. Now, if I would have chosen the lower end of the range, that would have given me a smaller number. I believe anything acceptable between 0.183 and 0.25 of sorts would have worked for this answer choice here. Okay, looking at number 35, it's telling us that we have a histogram summarizes the distribution of data composed of 50 integers. The first bar represents the number of integers that are at least 0 but less than 5, so we know that's like 0 to 4 here in the first one, and then 5 to 9 in the next one, and so forth. The second bar represents the number of integers that are at least 5, 10, and so forth. What is one possible value of the median of the data set? Well, we have 50 values, right? And so we know that the lower half has to be 1 through 25, because that's what the first 25 numbers represent. And then the next upper half will be 26 through 50. So we then know that the median has to be the average of these two numbers, but we don't have actual numbers. We just have the frequency or the values, the number of values that we have. Well, in the first one, we have 12. The second one, we have 9, 9. And then we have 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 4, and 8. And we're looking for the 25th and 26th number. So if we look at here, the first column is just going to have 1 through 12. And then if I go through the first two columns, I'm going to be adding another 9 values. So that's just going to be 1 through 21 there. Well, that still doesn't include 25 or 26. So if I then do the next 3 columns, what I'll then see in this next third column, that will include 9 more values. So now that's going to include values 22 through 30. Well, as you see, this thing right here is right in between that. And so we know that the range is right through there. Any value of 10 through 14 would have worked on this one. Okay, let's look at number 36 here. So here we're just essentially plugging in values. It says in the equation above, the kinetic energy K of a 200-gram object is given in terms of speed V. If the equation is rewritten in the form of V times A times K is square root of K, where A is a positive constant, what is the value of A? So we're solving for A here. And we understand that in the equation of the kinetic energy K of a 200-gram object of things. So within that, we know that the 200 here is going to go where the K is at, and we're going to solve for V, right? So as we do that, I'm going to rewrite it. So I'm going to have 200 equals, no, my apologies, the 200 does not go there. We're solving for V, but that's the 200, that's that value right there. So let's rewrite this, copy this down. We have K equals 200 V squared over 2. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to multiply by 2. So it eliminates that and multiply this side by 2. So then that's going to give us 2K is equivalent to 200 V squared. Well, the next thing we're going to do is divide by 200 in an effort to eliminate and try to isolate the V there. So now what we end up with, 1 over 200, that's just going to give me, that's just going to reduce down to 1 over 100, or K over 100 equals V squared of things. So now we got to take the square root of these values. Actually, let me pull this out a little bit more. That'll probably be a little bit easier. Let me show that as like 1 over 100 times k. So that'll be easier. So now we've got to take the square root, and we're taking the square root of each one of these. So really what this is saying is the square root of 1 over 100 times the square root of k is equivalent to v. And if you take the square root of each of these, one of these, you could say I have the square root of 1 over the square root of 100 times the square root of k equals v. So we want to split it up. So that's just going to give me 1. Square root of 100 is just 10. And that's just still going to be square root of k equals v. So this is in the same form as this right here. It's just kind of flipped backwards. But the a here, that is what we see here is in 110. So we could say that the a here equals 1 over 10 or 0.2. Either one of those will work as the answer choice. Okay, 37 here. What we see in this one is we see a graph. It is asking what is the population of Alaska in thousands in 1990. So this is just a graphing interpretation problem. So we're looking at 1990. We see 1990 is in between these 2 years. And so as I sort of go up from here, we can see that is at 550. So the answer choice is 550. And then it's saying here the ratio of population of Alaska in 1980 to the population of Alaska in 1970 can be written as A to 1. So we say 1980 to 1970 is the same thing as A to 1. What is the value of A? Well, if we look here, 1980, the population is 420. The population in 1970 is 300. So as we sort of reduce those down, we can drop a 0 there. So now we're left with 42 to 30. And then as we reduce that, 6 goes into both of those. 6 goes into that 7 times. So if I divide that by 6, divide that by 6, that's going to give me 7 to 5. So what I could write on this one of sorts, yeah. So what I could write is 7 to 5, or the value of 1 point. I think the decimal is 1.34, I think. 7 divided by 5. I think it's wanting something a little bit. Let me try something. 420 divided by 300 gives me 1.4. Those things. (1980 to 1970). Yeah. So not sure what. Yeah, 1/4 is the answer there on that one. As we look at that, or it says. Well, I'm trying to say. It looks like it says 67 over 50 is the answer choice. Not sure. 67 over 50. Is it being? I don't know. Let me double check something real quick. Just so 4. Did I write that down? 420. I know sometimes divided by 6. Yeah, I say here on this one, 7/5 is 1.4. The answer on this one. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and have any additional questions, always feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you.